Hi, I'm Dr. George Delgado, the president of Steno Institute, furthering research, education, and awareness around abortion pill reversal. We're giving women a second chance at choice. I'm also the president of Delgado Medical Consulting, helping small and medium-sized businesses stay open during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm the medical director of Culture of Life Family Services in San Diego County. Today, we're going to talk about what are the important aspects of end-of-life decision-making. Well, end of life decision making is extremely important. Why is that? Because it's better to consider how you would want medical treatment to occur for yourself or for your loved ones when you have planned to think about it, discuss it, discern before a crisis hits. Because during a crisis, it's very difficult to make good decisions. It's difficult to know what a person would want. It's difficult to battle prejudices, and it's difficult to battle the biases of the medical team. So it's always better to look at these things ahead of time. And from a Catholic perspective, we should know biblical and church teachings. From a non-Catholic perspective, we should know biblical teachings. And for all people, we should know what the natural law reveals to us about end-of-life care and about the dignity of human life. So one of the ways to accomplish end-of-life planning is first just to have discussions. Families should be encouraged to have discussions with their loved ones so that their loved ones know what they would want if they were unable to make medical decisions for themselves. Because that's what this is all about. This is all about when you can't make a decision for yourself. But it's also about times when you can make decisions for yourself and you've thought about this so that you're not put in a pressure-packed situation and told you have to decide right now if you want this surgery, if you want this or that. But more importantly, it's when we can't make those decisions for ourselves. So in light of this, we have instruments called advanced care directives. What are advanced directives? Advanced directives are different types. One of the most common types is called durable power of attorney for healthcare, also called a proxy decision maker document. And different states have different names. But essentially what this does is it appoints a substitute or surrogate decision maker for you when you can't make medical decisions. And this is a person that you trust. And from a Catholic perspective, you would trust would know the church's teachings and biblical teachings on treatments that should be given at the end of life or when someone's very seriously ill. And this should be a person that's had conversations with you. So that person knows what you feel, knows the things you wouldn't like, because there are many treatments that are not absolutely necessary. And we'll talk about those briefly in a second, that are really optional. So that person should know what your preferences are and should know the teachings of the church. So the durable power of attorney for healthcare is the most important one because that's a person who can make decisions for you at the time under those circumstances. Sometimes there's a document called a living will that can be separate or can be part of the advanced directive that contains the durable power of attorney for healthcare. And the living will is a place where you can specify what kind of treatments you would want in certain situations. So living will is nice because you can put your preferences on paper. The reason why I don't think it's as important as the durable power of attorney for healthcare or the surrogate decision maker designation is that the living will is something that where you're expressing your preferences really in the abstract when you don't have all of the details in the context of a particular situation. So you're looking far ahead into the future. When the future does arrive, the context then will be there, but you won't be there. You won't be able to analyze the context. Your surrogate decision maker will be the one who will be analyzing the context and the details of that context. So that's why it's so much more important to make a very good decision and to appoint a surrogate decision maker than it is to have a living will telling what you would want, because the circumstances can be so different. There also are documents that are advanced directives that allow you to declare yourself to be a no code or to not be resuscitated, so that when emergency medical technicians are called to your side when you are sick, so that if you feel that you would not want CPR, they will not do it. So this is a specialized document that really is for only emergency medical personnel. The next type of document is called a POLST or a MOLST. POLST stands for Physician's Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, while MOLST stands for Medical Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. Different states give them different names, but essentially they're really the same thing. These are documents that usually come on bright pieces of paper that are actionable medical orders. They're just like medical orders that you would see in a hospital chart, where in a medical setting, someone sees them, they will follow those orders. So because these are medical orders that are actionable, these are the ones that give the person the most control. But because they have the most control, they also have the most risk, especially because if they're completed early in a disease process, again, the person who's completing this is giving medical orders signed by a physician, because this document has to be signed by a physician. They're creating medical orders that will be carried out in the future when circumstances may be much different, much more complex, much different than the person had envisioned. So I prefer that these POLSTs or MOLSTs only be filled out when the patient is getting closer to the last few years of life, where things really are clear, and it becomes very apparent what treatments would be beneficial, which ones would be futile. Because the POLST document is very much similar to, like, when you admit a patient to the hospital, you write admitting orders, but you generally don't write discharge orders because you don't know the condition the patient will be at discharge. But let's say if you admitted a patient and you wrote admitting orders and discharge orders at the same time, that often would not make sense and often could lead to problems. There are some instances where we do it. For example, if a patient is admitted for a simple blood transfusion, is only going to be in the hospital for several hours, we often do write admission orders and discharge orders at the same time. So in the same way, a POLST or a MOLST makes the most sense when a patient has a shorter time to live. There are some pitfalls to advanced directive templates, because many of them have a bias to being anti-life and are biased towards not using life-sustaining treatment. So there are some Catholic alternatives. You should be aware of those. The National Catholic Bioethics Center has a great one that you can do. Go to their website, ncbcenter.org. There also is a nice one on the Diocese of Dallas website. It's cathedral.org, cathedral.org. And then there's one from the Arlington Diocese, arlingtondiocese.org, that gives you a nice Catholic advanced directive that's easy to use and that you'll like very much. In these circumstances of difficult advanced care planning, it's very important, again, to keep the teaching of the church in mind. Make sure that the patients are talking to their family members. Make sure they appoint a trusted surrogate decision maker who knows the thinking of the church and will carry out the thinking. And use POLST and MOLST very carefully and in a discriminate fashion, not using them too early on, but only when you see that the trajectory of the course of an illness is going a certain way, because those are medically actionable orders that can be carried out, and you don't want to regret having signed one of those. But again, to sum it up, the most important part of advanced planning is to think about what kind of treatments you would want and to appoint a good surrogate decision maker who will know what kind of treatments you would want and would know the teachings of the church. Thanks for listening. This is Dr. George Delgado, the president of Steno Institute and also the medical director of Culture of Lives Family Services.